And then we have the addition to the fire department roles.
I have a comment about that. I think the
Of course.
address is wrong in the agenda. I think it should be Dunkirk rather than Fredonia.
Where exactly?
On the agenda.
You're probably correct. Park Avenue, 763 Park Avenue, probably, I would, yeah.
It should be on the paperwork there, though.
Okay, so can we correct that?
They never said
Yes.
where it was.
It doesn't say, so
No.
I assumed we don't have to, I apologize.
Okay. The addition to the fire department roles. And then we have the request from Opera House to use the West Park Common and the gazebo for the barbecue fundraiser on the 7th of June, 2014.
Come on, cripple.
Hello. I'm sorry you're not very well.
I've got a wheelchair in the warehouse.
And then we have the,
It's motorized.
that's good. And then we have the EAP, we talked about at the last meeting, and now we have the actual resolution.
Mayor, I see it in the agenda here, it's just we have an invoice. Do we have any other information to look over before we approve that?
About what?
EAP?
Which one is that?
The EAP?
EAP.
There is, I have a letter that's addressed to the employees of the village.
Yeah, it's just, this does not explain the scope of their work or anything more than just a brief overview. And already, we also have they supplied a invoice already.
Right, the issue was that, we're supposed to have a EAP program, okay? Under,
It's a federal
OSHA.
requirement.
Yeah, it's a requirement. We let our contract lapse a little bit, okay? And so that's why it's backdated.
What contract did we let lapse?
The EAP.
I believe we never had an EAP policy or.
Well, we had an EAP policy, but it wasn't kept up the way it should have been.
Oh.
So basically, we're taking care of that now.
Can we get more information before we act upon this?
Well, here's the thing, we do have to have it. It is a federal OSHA requirement that we have to have it, and so the reason it's backdated is because we had to have it. They provide a scope of services which is really more expansive than what we need. We already have one employee that is making use of it, and so that's why we need to pass it tonight.
So, we don't have any ability to get any more information
What
on
more
this.
information would you like?
Well-
That's the
Well, I mean,
question.
I'm looking,
that's
I'm
the-
looking for
This
kind
is
of an
what we
outline.
have. This is
Well,
just
that is the outline.
That's what
This is
everybody
what you
has.
get online. This is all you get for
That's what
information?
everybody has.
Right, we can have more information. We're having an EAP program meeting to let the employees know what opportunities they have. But that's just what we're acting on.
Do the unions require certain EAP programs with
No,
employees?
The
Okay, so
unions
there's
do
nothing
not
to do with,
require it. It's part of the OSHA that we need to have an EAP
Sure,
program. We need to
right.
provide it. And so this is not only that, but it's more than we need to provide for a smaller sum. We worked out a really good deal.
and where are they, who, I don't have an address of these people.
It's on the voucher page, on the bottom.
Will they come out of Wellsville, New York?
Well, the EAP program that I've been talking to is Wally Tradition. They're the ones that we bought the EAP program through.
Okay,
And
so Wally brokered this through the ESI group that
Yes.
comes out of Wellsville, is that what I understand?
that's correct.
That's good to know. I mean, these are,
Well, I'm just
But I
trying
mean,
to, I'm trying to,
Wellsville isn't relevant, it's the, you know, the services they provided. The actual service provider has been very good with us, you know, we've had some,
who was our
issues.
former
that I couldn't tell you.
EAP provider?
Yeah, that I couldn't tell you. But in terms of what we're getting, they're already providing, in terms of, like, the shooting, things like that.
Right.
Okay? They're already providing services,
Okay,
all right? That's why this is backdated a month, because they're already providing services.
okay, so you're saying this is through our
Our
insurance carrier?
insurance.
Yes,
carrier.
well,
Okay.
yes.
All
I
right.
mean, it's not technically through our insurance carrier, but that's who we're working with, yes.
Okay, because I know like through the school district, our health insurance carrier provides that service as part of, I mean, you don't pay extra for that. on top
Right.
of it.
Thi-
I'm sure it's part
this
of the
is-
premiums.
This is something different, this is something that we needed to provide, and.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, and what we did was we had a little gap, so they backdated the contract for us.
Okay, so we were only in lapse of a month?
That's correct.
How are the employees of the village gonna be getting this information?
The cards that have the numbers and everything on them, those packets have already been provided. I spoke to Ryan, the fire chief, yesterday. He already picked up those contracts, and so the employees are getting notice of that.
Like Tony, do your crew get
We have-
copies of like a pamphlet or a booklet?
Packets, every mailbox got them.
Yep.
They were included with the payroll at the end of last week.
Is that how you're gonna communicate with the employees?
They have extra brochures downstairs.
Right.
So their first contact would be through the company? Is that it? They don't have any direct?
No, it's a completely anonymous.
Gotcha.
We don't know who they are or what they use.
Okay. And these were issued last Friday, you said, through the paycheck?
They were in
Through
the
payroll?
payroll.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
right, we're going to the roundabout. We need to approve some manhole sewer covers. And maybe you should explain that.
Well, I have a question before you explain it.
Sure.
I spoke to Tony about it because I had no idea what this was about because I thought that would be a DOT thing, New York State DOT, and
It is.
apparently we take care of the ones downtown, and that wouldn't be included. I have no problem, I think that's a good idea. There is one point in this resolution, like the resolution we had for the DRI grant, that grants the mayor to sign, directed to sign any and all documentation that may become necessary as a result of this project as it relates to the village of Fredonia. So that was carte blanche again, any documentation.
Well, I don't know about carte blanche, but that's the language that the state sent over. What we're talking about is nothing important, insignificant. What we're talking about is the state is going to do the roundabout, whether we like it or not. There's a couple of manholes that need to be raised to the level that they need them to be raised to, and that's all that is. And the language in there is directly from the state.
Oh, I'm not comfortable with the project as it relates to any and all documentation that may become necessary as a result of this project, so it's the roundabout project.
Like I said, that is the language the state sent over, okay? That shouldn't be a big deal. I mean, it really, it doesn't require almost anything
Isn't
from
the
us.
project the covers of the sewer manholes?
Yes, I
That's
mean,
the
that's all that
project.
we have.
And then any and all documentation that may become necessary as a result of this
For
project.
that,
as
for
it
that
relates to it.
project, for these
Right,
covers?
for the manhole covers, that's the language
You-
the
you-
DOT sent over.
Doug, you understand that I can't sign anything about the roundabout because it's not in the village. So
Right.
it's not my, if I sign something, it will be first illegal and second, not of any value, because the roundabout is not gonna be in the village.
Well, this is part of the roundabout project if we're doing it here.
It's the sewers.
Yeah, it's just a
It's
couple of
not the
manholes, Doug,
roundabout,
it's not the
we're
roundabout
responsible
project.
for the sewers.
Well, I just, we talk about checks and balances here, and with that last DRI grant, we just delegated all our checks and balances as a village board away, that every documentation with that project is just we have no say or no looking over, or no checks and balances in that. And I see the same
This
thing
should not be a
happening here.
problem, because you voted against it. So this $2.5 million, if it was up to you, we weren't gonna have it. So
What I
that's
wanted to
not a
do, Mayor, in
problem.
that last resolution was just to strike that part, and I wish to strike this part. I was not against the DRI grant. I thought it was an excellent grant. I'm not against grants, and I was with you on that grant.
No, you voted against it, but,
Because of that
Okay, and you
portion
can
of it.
vote
No,
against
we're not
this
done.
one.
We're not done. This is, just because you say we're done discussing this, we're not, Mayor.
Okay,
This is
well,
our-
we're not just done discussing it, but the truth is that the state, wanting to move forward the project, doesn't want to have to come back to the board for every single.
They
manhole.
should.
Nah, they shouldn't. They should come to the board for a project. That's what they're doing.
Then it should specifically say this is for the project, the manhole project, and not any and all documentation that may become necessary as a result of this project.
See, the thing of it is, the state doesn't want to monkey around with every single manhole coming back to the board. They would like to have you guys approve all the manholes for this project.
That's fine. I just feel that this language here states that this kind of puts a foot in the door to be able to sign any and all documentation as a result of this project, the manhole project, as it relates to the Village of Fredonia.
Well,
And I'm
Trustee
uncomfortable
Essick,
with
I'm just wondering, if this manhole is okay, why isn't that manhole okay?
I did not dispute that. I'm saying this project is for the manhole, but it says
Right,
And-
that's the
and all- as-
language the state asked us to do.
as a
because
result
they
of this
didn't want-
project, any
They
doc-
didn't want to go back to us for each and every manhole.
well, I just don't feel that this documentation is specific enough.
That's what
and-
New York State sent over, because they don't want to come
By
back
this
to it.
project, they means just the manhole covers, correct?
Yes,
It's
that's
not
correct.
opening it up to any other thing that they might do. It's
Well,
just,
No, and there is nothing else for us
Right,
to
but
do.
there isn't anything else for us to do.
There is nothing
right,
else
I'm just
for
saying,
us
but
to do.
that, right. So
The rest of the
when they
project-
say this project, they just mean the manhole covers.
Absolutely, because there is nothing else for us.
Right.
The rest of the project is within the state right of way.
Right,
that
it's-
has
it's
nothing to do
already
with us.
done.
The only thing that we have is the sewers that we are responsible for the manholes. Just when they resurface Route 20 down through Main Street, that we had to do the same thing.
Right.
They don't do the manholes because it's our sewers. But the rest is all, it's all within the state. So we don't have anything else.
Well, yes, we do. In the middle of the roundabout, we're able to provide what's put in there. And if at the end of this project, if two children holding some books with an arbor of grapes over them is in there, we know that we had more than a manhole involvement.
They offer us the option. They will not pay for it. They will not do anything else. They offer us the option. If we want to put anything there to look at it and be happy or signify anything that we want to do, that's they offer. We don't have to put anything. It's not ours. It's not. I mean, anything.
Okay. Well, I am in favor of this resolution with the exception of that one paragraph there.
Well, that's the way
that's
they're
the one they-
requiring it to be, the way the state's requiring us to pass a resolution to meet their needs to have a statement covered so that they
What are we looking at? I'm sorry.
they have what's needed to get the job
That's our
done.
sewer
So,
line.
I mean, I don't know why there's such a big, issue. I guess if you want to vote no against it, we could vote for it, but.
I'd like to take a few minutes and kind of discuss this a little bit. This resolution was handed to me yesterday afternoon around 3 o'clock. So really, I contacted Tony right away, and he kind of filled me in on what manholes we're discussing in this. I kind of got a little information regarding what manholes we're discussing in this. And stopping by his office this morning, I had to take a picture of the actual sewer map. And Tony, myself, and I forgot who else was with me at the time. Jen was there with us? Yeah, we were kind of explaining to it. The manhole that the state is talking about, if you look at our sewer map, is actually located in the driveway of the Fredonia Central School. There is no manhole cover or any manholes that we found that was actually in Route 20. Is that correct?
there are manholes, there's that one, and there's a couple off the side into the McDonald's parking lot and all, that may or may, I doubt they're gonna be coming into the work zone. The only other manholes in that map are the town of Pomfret lines.
Correct.
Okay? And I talked to Jude today to verify that. So, when they sent that paperwork out, I believe you still have the documentation from the state, it does reference Village of Fredonia / Pomfret Sanitary. To me, I even had Rex Tolman look at it last week, as I alluded to you. It looks like they're just asking for a general permission in case there's any and all manholes that may or may not fall in within whatever final design they have, to just adjust.
Right. And that's the conversation you and I had.
Right.
And looking over the map this morning, there is a water district or sewer water district that's located at the Rite Aid on the corner, which ties into our sanitary underneath the street, or underneath the parking, or underneath the driveway at the Fredonia Central School. And the only other manhole covers that may be part of this project was another sewer district line located over at the Country Fair across the street, which ties into the sanitary on the town of Pomfret side. So we really don't have any manhole covers right now.
You would have to probably refer to the engineers, because they felt, it looks like they wanted a blanket kind of coverage for all of anything they saw in that intersection. Whether I or you agree with that or not is, you know,
And when did you get this information from the state, Tony?
about a week and a half ago,
Okay, and when do they need this information back, this resolution back to them?
21st,
Which is,
it's today.
Today's 19th.
Thursday.
Friday, Thursday.
And basically, you don't have to grant it. We'll just have a couple of giant potholes in the village right away. That's all.
how do you figure potholes?
Well, because if they raise the level of the street and they don't raise the level of the manholes, that's a bad
But
thing.
Dan, what I'm explaining here, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Or the other
we have no manholes
Well,
located in the
So if we don't
roundabout.
have any manholes, we're
So,
not gonna do anything
so
in the
basically, this
village.
resolution really doesn't need to be even passed tonight because it doesn't concern anything.
Well, if the grading, if they happen to have to do grading into those areas where,
That's private property, Jim. That has nothing to do with our manholes.
Okay, so if you don't pass it, that's fine. And when
I-
people bump on that, then we can
Well, if
say
they're-
that's
if-
what we did.
Well, if they're
No,
bumping on our
we're gonna make
manhole
that-
cover located in the
We're gonna make that
driveway.
discussion then, that is not ours, it's the schools, or it's ours, and, I mean, to me, it's really a wasting of time. You don't wanna pass this very simple resolution?
No, I needed some more information, and I had a scramble yesterday at 3 o'clock, which Tony already had left, and I had a scramble this morning and change my schedule so I could go down and discuss some information with
Except one
Tony.
manhole.
I mean, I need to do
So,
some
of course,
background
of
on this
course,
before
of
I
course,
vote
of
on
course.
Well, I'm
anything.
not sure why you
Of
didn't
course.
get it. I did this last week, so.
You did what last week?
This resolution, when I got it from the DOT.
And when did I receive it?
I have no idea.
Mayor Landis, when did you send out this resolution to us?
Yesterday,
At what time?
I don't remember.
About 3
Okay,
o'clock.
well, let me tell you, I think you knew that Anne Marie was on vacation. I was on vacation too. I'm sorry I didn't call before I took my vacation. I came last night, yesterday, and I saw that you did not have the resolution. So I sent it over. It's a simple resolution. It took you a day and a half. I mean, that's up to you, not up to me. I sent you the resolution because I thought you were gonna have the agenda today, and
But
we're
I
gonna
need to
have
do my
this-
due diligence in understanding the
Okay,
resolution before.
Next time, you're gonna have your due diligence for one manhole for about a week and a half. Now, we were not at the office. I was not. I took a vacation. You knew that Anne Marie took a vacation.
That's understandable. When I go on vacation, I have people cover my position.
Well, here's the thing. Let's vote on it or not vote on it.
My-
When
my-
I
my
don't
point-
vote
my
on it,
point here is
and
I needed to do
bounce,
some
I'm
work.
just gonna say, well, the Village Fredonia Board, damn it, I bounced on that manhole cover. I mean, it's not, this isn't
Look
rocket
it.
science, Roger, it's not.
No,
The-
my
the state
point
asked-
being,
the
Dan,
state
is,
asked for the ability to level the manhole covers that we belong to the rest of the grade. That's not, it's
And it's
it's
whether
not
it goes up or
complicated, it's
down.
just bang.
It could
All
go
right,
up,
if
could
you don't
go
wanna
down.
do it, that's fine, but, I mean.
nobody said anything I didn't want to do it. I
Okay,
said,
then
I'm
Rudy,
only
let's vote.
asking for more information and doing my job in discovering what manholes we're talking about here. It could be the curb. It could have been a flower pot in the middle of
And
the
does
village.
it matter?
It does matter, because I just found out this morning that manhole cover really isn't any right of way of this new project anyway. It's located in the street of the school.
So they're not gonna do it. So they won't do it.
How far up the?
But again, without me
Not that it
doing some
matters.
homework on these resolutions.
What if they have
What's
to
the
grade up
difference?
into it?
What's the difference?
Either do it or don't do it, but I mean, either way, the state is going to do the roundabout.
You're missing my point.
Yes. I don't see the point.
All right, thank you very much.
Anybody else on that?
Did Tony want to say something?
Yes,
No? Okay.
you're covered. Anybody else from this side?
No, I'm okay with it.
And then we have the abstract number 508, 509, and 510 for approval. Jim, where is Jeff? Jeff, where is?
I don't know. He said he was gonna do it. He was on his way back from Albany, I know that, but.
Okay, well, we'll go forward then and wait for him. We have the buildings inspector report for the month of January 2019. And then we have the justice report for January 2019. And the fire department report for January 2019. Okay, let's go to the old business and the installation of street light near 560 Temple. Does anybody has anything to say? The only thing I'm going to say is that at the next meeting we have a representative from National Grid coming to talk about LED lights in most of the village, or as much of the village as we want. And it's going to ask you if you want to wait for that, or want to, I mean, I didn't know what you wanted to do.
I'd be happy to discuss that information, and then we could add that resolution on after we discuss how the village wants to go forward with the new lighting project.
Okay, so he's coming next meeting. Okay,
So we're gonna wait on that one?
yeah.
Okay.
And now we go to the PPD sewer district contract. Jim has a new, looked at it from a different perspective, and he wants to present a different calculation, a different contract, but a different calculation. I believe you have it.
Okay,
Is
As
this
a-
from you here, Jim?
yes, yeah. As just a little different view on this, trying to solve this concern. I took a little different view. And I know this is not the idea of the whole contract. This is also, this is an example of the formula. So the numbers that I'm using in here are used off of previous years, and they may not be, Jim would have to add in any current costs and any changes, but the idea is the formula. Okay, so the, when we're looking to decide on how to work with this PPD contract, we have to first derive rates from relevant costs of operations, the maintenance of the wastewater treatment plant, including the administration fees and all the other costs as listed on there. They also have to include the capital improvements, such as bonds for essential upgrades, repairs, and expansions. So, which we have, I know that there was talk of how the last idea might come up forward, and those costs weren't included, so I did consider those into there. So even the new amount of money that we were bonding for these new upgrades, we'd have to consider that in addition to what's on here. So anyhow, take the idea of the cost of the wastewater treatment plant itself, and then of course the village on their side, we have extra costs. There's also added employee benefits that Jim described to me that there would be added into there on the village's side. But we have the sanitary sewers that we charge for in addition to
in addition to what the wastewater treatment plant itself would be. So in order to do PPD, you'd only have the expenses associated with the wastewater treatment plant, not the village's portion. And then, so anyhow, so when you're coming up with the billing computation, you have your costs, expenses, and then you have your, determine your PPD flow by the meter. The total that's that's going through the plant, which is illustrated in the center, and then the village's billable water, and that's how we determine the total. So, and the next thing you do would you take the PPD metered flow and you divide it by the total flow through the plant, and that comes up with their share of what's going through the plant. So you end up with approximately 12% based on those figures from that previous year. So then you take your cost, your that amount, and that would go into your cost goes in, that gets divided into the cost of the from the plant. You end up with your gross costs. That's where I came up with that gross cost of the 151,423, and of course you would multiply it by 1,000 to get your 1,000. Your price per 1,000 of 4.05. And before, in the past, they in past formulas, they had given shared revenues, which it didn't make a whole lot of sense because they were taking a portion of their own revenues that were paid to the village. So they were taking a portion back, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. That's actually the amount that goes to cover the cost of the wastewater treatment plant. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that you would give them a portion of that back again, of their own fees. So I took that out and I just moved it over to the village's side. So the revenues actually come off the village's portion of the cost of the plant for operating it. And then on the second page, I went down, I just based, the contract should be based on the formula used and the length of time that we're going to have allow the service to the determine as the length of time that we're going to service the PPD. And then the contract will have the ability to adjust, be able to adjust annually based on the costs that we incur operating the plant, which it also should include, and that would also raise or lower their rates, depending on if our costs. But the idea is that we're servicing them, but so you can't just give them a lump sum now and go for 35 years of that same lump sum. So you have to have it adjustable annually, just like ours does. So anyhow, that's where that came up with. So and then I also thought that we might have considered to keep a safe reserve fund, that we would add a percentage, but that could, be determined by the board if they wanted to add a percentage or not, with a 5 cents per thousand or whatever. Then of course the contract. People have to understand that when they're doing these contracts, we're not. I know there's fear of how much the cost per thousand was to their customers. Well, the contract is it's billed to the district. So we don't bill to their individuals. So it's up to the district to decide how to bill them. And if they could find ways to reduce their costs, they could reduce it to their district. In other words, like dealing with the I&I problems. That could reduce, because we're billing them quarterly to the whole district, not just to the individuals. So they can determine how they can adjust that. But they also deal with their county contract. The county runs the program, and they have other costs that they add on to their own administration costs and a bunch of other fees, and they determine an annual budget, which is, their annual budget that for this year is well beyond what we would begin considering asking from them this year. So that's already been approved in the county's budget for their PPD.
What is that?
The county, the county actually runs the PPD. And
What is their, what's the number budget?
according to the county's budget for 2019, the contract that they do for sewage treatment would be $185,000. That is what this came off their website. And so that's well within any amount that we asked. And based on the past performance, I think that we would actually be coming in slightly under what they had proposed, or what they had paid in previous years per thousand. I know that they have an INI problem, but, they can address that on their own, save themselves some costs. And I gave an example on the back. But there's also the idea that we also need to keep in mind that if there's other added costs because of the type of sewage that they send us needs to be verified. If it's typically right now, only household sewage, but if they, for some reason, have different types of sewage, then the village has to be notified, or if we detect it, there would have to be a change in costs, because there's more cost, there may be more cost to the village for having such sewage. Like I said, the formula, I mean, even if it was based on 40 million gallons per year, the cost would be still under what they've budgeted significantly, based on this formula. So, I mean, there was concern, how much they were putting in, how much it was gonna cost them, and they were worried about paying that extra for their INI issue. But the fact is, even at a higher amount than they're currently putting in per year, they're gonna pay less than what they've budgeted. And actually, I think it even came in less than what they've paid in a couple of previous years here. Let's see.
There was 1 year where they paid 160, but the majority of that,
Right.
their payments were much less than that.
Yeah, the majority of it, but in past years, and they were getting credits for, when ConAgra was here, as you can see on the past years, ConAgra helped overall because of the large amount that was going through. Our plant can handle a lot of sewage. The more that goes through it, the better off everyone is. So we're always searching for more business for our sewage treatment plant. That would also save them money. I mean, if the plant is operating efficiently and without having to do a lot of repairs, then the cost actually becomes better for everyone. But right now, there is some cost coming in because of the repairs and maintenance. So that it goes up to everyone. We all have to share the costs, just in order to maintain it. So it's a fair and equitable solution. But I do believe that it could be, utilized in this contract. I don't know, did I explain it well enough? I don't know. Jim, do you have any input on it? I mean, I know we talked about it. I don't know if you have any questions on how I described it. I guess I know you didn't want to comment on as far as whether you approve or not, because I know that's not your place. But did I explain it to everyone enough? I don't know.
I have a question.
Okay, sure.
Where did you get this gallonage for the wastewater treatment plant, 307, 201?
Okay, that's when you're adding the village's water usage to the PPD's metered flow.
The village water and the PPD sewer flow?
The PPD sewer flow and the village's billable water, because that's the most accurate way of collecting what we can
determine how much goes through that plant.
Can I point out that in discussions with the PPD board, we had talked about having a provisional contract contingent upon the village's construction of an inflow meter to the wastewater treatment plant. Okay, and I wish the board would consider that in our ongoing negotiations.
I think that might be something we could look at down the road, but we have to come up with a contract for now. And I think that the village can then, as a interest for into the future, that it probably wouldn't, I mean, there's a lot of value, I think there's a lot of value to having an inflow meter from the village.
And my thought is that we're in a financial position now to rapidly pursue construction of a meter.
That take, well, even rapidly, when you say rapidly, and.
But not before the.
It wouldn't be that rapidly.
We need a contract in the meanwhile, but
Right.
Hopefully, from my position, I would not like to see this contract or a similar contract proceed for more than a year until we have
Well, that would,
matched inflow meters for both the PPD and the village of Fredonia.
I think that, that really doesn't matter as far as what we're looking for in a contract.
That would be a big expense.
It would be a big expense. I think it might be more than you might anticipate, but the idea is with this contract, if it's adjusted annually, and that new metered inflow from the village has an impact either up or down, my request would be that we would adjust the pricing annually anyhow. The idea of servicing them, that the contract is based on the idea that we're going to provide service. We're going to provide service for an X amount of years based on a formula. And that's what I'm kind of looking at here. And what are we going to include in the contract? Like I said, the possible changes. That could possibly, wouldn't it need to be in the contract? It'd be just a view of what the village can do into the future, and it could cause the cost to either increase or decrease based on the formula. So I guess we won't know that until we put one in, but there's a great cost to that, and that could take some time to get to. But I think in the meantime, we need to come up with a contract. Like I said, that would be on an annual basis anyhow. So if you're calculating the numbers annually, if it proved to be a savings for them, then they would get that savings annual. You know what I mean?
I think the question is more of fairness rather than
Correct.
savings for one
Well,
party or another.
Sure.
Mr. Sedota and Mr. Barris, correct me if I'm wrong, when the committee's current contract proposal is based on flow from the PPD. Now, we can install a master flow meter for the village, but this calculations really wouldn't matter whether we have a master flow in or not at this point in time, because we're only concerned with the flow that the PPD is putting into our plant, and the formula to charge them is based on that. Now, during our negotiations, the last year's billing of $146,000 some odd dollars was extreme to them. I'm kind of finding Mr. Linden's proposal of $151,400. I'm kind of sure that they're probably going to say to us that that's not equitable.
Well,
Whether or not you feel is, I mean, or if they're thinking $146,000 is extreme, and it was based on, I believe your calculations are based on the old contract?
It was
Language?
on the
On the language of the old contract or something?
No, I changed the language.
Oh,
No,
but I mean, but it's not.
I use the numbers from the, as it says on from the June 1st, 2017 through May 31st, 2018. And for that year and the previous year too, that year that they were paying 142.7, and then the previous year they paid 166. So for them to be complaining about a reduction in costs,
I mean, overall, I mean, I mean, or within a reasonable amount of, change. And like I said, this formula actually gives them an opportunity to reduce their costs simply by dealing with, well, not only the costs that are incurred, but with the county. They have administration costs and many other costs involved with the county itself. Their total budget, they're bringing in revenues of $407,000 to pay their total costs of their sewer district. There's other costs involved with them that they could adjust within their own district system. But they also, like I said, they could do things such as address their problem that they've been notified years ago that they had, or they knew that they had an I&I problem, and they failed to do anything about it. They said they didn't want to spend the costs. Well, from what I see, they have budgeted well beyond what the village has been charging them anyhow. So if they hired a service to deal with their I&I, maybe they wouldn't have a problem. But I think that this is certainly a fair contract, fair formula, I should say, and very equitable in rates. And it gives it opportunity to go up or down, but there could be possible savings. And even, like I said, with more services or more districts that use the village's service here, it could actually give them more savings too, because the more processing we do per thousand, the price could go down. So
It was my thought and experience dealing with the Portland, Pomfret, Dunkirk district is that the metered water measures have little relevance to the actual flow. So, but we know what the metered, we know what the flow is for the PPD district, but we have no idea what it is for the village. So, and it is highly probable that the village has an enormous inflow and infiltration problem as well, which we have no handle upon because we have no ways to measure that until a inflow meter is installed.
And I'm going to describe a little situation. The scenario is we have a plant that we operate, and it costs us X amount of dollars to operate it. Regardless of what the village puts in, this is how much is determined to be going through it. But if there is a number to the cost regardless. And in order for them to receive a service, we have to have a percentage of that cost. And we know we know how much they're putting through. So it's a reasonable view of how to do it at this time. I don't see any other way to do it without at this point, like I said, there's a cost to the plant. We have to determine a price to them, and we know how much how much flow they have. So, I think that's a reasonable cost. The village itself pays significantly more within the village limits. But of course, we do have we also have our share of the sewage lines to maintain. But so do they. And like I said, their sewage lines, they're spending, let's see here. Their sanitary sewers, they budgeted $209,000 for their sanitary sewers. So,
May I propose that if you don't have any questions for Jim, take it home, look it over, and then discuss it next time? Because this is the first time you see it, obviously.
Jim, what's the urgency to move forward on the proposal that the committee submitted? We want to move soon. We'll discuss it in another meeting before we put anything up for a resolution.
Well, they were waiting for us to come to a decision before they presented it to their board. And they have not only their local board, but then they have to present it to the county board for approval also. So, you know, I don't know that there's any real urgency. It's just that the longer we wait, the longer we continue under the existing contract. And,
I mean, I don't think there is any reason to wait, just to give the board the time to compare the two. I think that's the only, that's why I'm offering for the next meeting to be discussed again, and they can decide which one they want to go with.
Just one quick, real brief comment on our proposal. It's simplified compared to the last contract. It does include all the BOD charges that were, not charges, but the credits. It's simplified. This allows for when we have an increase in sewer rates, they also get that. It kind of, with the 3 years at that 3 years at 40, then go down to 35, it does make them push towards the I&I improvements. Based on flows with the previous contract and compared to this calculation actually increased cost or increased the revenues coming in by, I think, $20,000 on 1 year, was it, compared to the calculations used on the old contract. So it's not terrible. I think we want to be fair and equitable, but we don't want to be eating costs. I don't think we are eating costs with this proposal. I think it's fair, and I really don't see the need to build them excessively if we don't have to. Like Jim said at the last meeting here, if you were on the other side of this, you know, we'd be expecting the other municipality to be treating us with some fairness and equity. So
I think you have to understand, we're negotiating a contract on behalf of the village. And this is certainly an equitable view. But when you're reducing it actually considerably, the costs, you're actually asking the people of the village to share in the costs that are endured by that are put forward by the, I should say, by the PPD. I mean, in other words, we're sharing their costs if you're doing, reducing them to that number. I mean, you're going down to a very, very low percentage of about, what does it come down to, about 9%, which is extremely low based on really any of these. I mean, you haven't had 9% since 2013. So I mean, to go that far back, I think, and based on the costs that we have going into this, and we have projects going in, we're going to have to include the more debt service on this. I mean, to start out that it's such a small fraction of what you were prior to this. I mean, you're actually going backwards.
well, but the last contract, Jim, the calculations were inadequate. They were wrong. They were overcharging them based on the calculations of past flow from the village when we had industry here. It doesn't, that current contract doesn't apply now, so for you to say that those figures that they're paying currently based on our old contract are correct, and they should be paying that or more, I don't feel that's correct.
No, I didn't base my figures on the old formula. I based the figures on the numbers of costs and the gallons.
He's creating his own formula.
Yeah, this is a whole new formula.
He's creating another formula. It's not,
Right, this is not the old
exactly.
formula, and so, and what you were looking at before, I mean, there were, like I said, they were giving them credits for, their credits for a percentage of their own payment to us. And we were also giving them other special districts in the village, other parts of the town of Pomfret that we service. They were giving them credits for that. And those are our revenues, the village's revenues, to pay for the plant.
So that they shouldn't be getting those credits. So, you know, that's, you know, those are.
The old contract was incorrect
Right,
currently.
and there
Don't
was still.
disagree with you there, that's why.
And also the formula that they used in order to determine the amount of gallons that goes through the plant was incorrect. They were doing a comparison of the village's use to their use. Well, we don't need that comparison. That's not a way to come up with a percentage of usage. That was given us a comparison of their usage to us. What we need is the usage of the total usage of the plant, a percentage of the total usage of the plant, in order to derive to what they are responsible to pay for, not a percentage of ours.
I agree with you, and that was the problem with the old
Right,
contract.
well, and I see that's basically is coming down with what the numbers of which of your committee came up with, is extremely low, when it comes up to 9%. Like I said, based on a very simple formula, that the number is actually higher. And it's relevant. I mean, it's.
I think we said whatever needs to be
Yeah.
said. Are you comfortable with one or the other right away, or because we need to go to the next thing? That's about is,
I have no further comments.
are you comfortable with one or the other?
No,
You're not comfortable with any?
I'm comfortable with the installation of a new inflow meter by the village.
Until
So
that time.
I'm not comfortable with any other suggestion.
All right. That can be, you know, the board can think about that, but definitely we cannot have that right away.
We understand that. So my position is whatever solution you might come up with, other than what I suggested, is entirely arbitrary.
Thank you. Kara?
Well, I guess I need to look at both of them, and I'm wondering is there a way to jibe both of them? I don't know.
It's
So it's
different.
different. I know, they're totally different.
Yeah,
Right,
they
the
take
formulas
different
are
approach.
different,
They
right.
take a different approach
Right.
to the whole thing. Roger?
Yeah, I'm just gonna need some time to I have some questions to talk to Jim about once I kind of dissect this, and Jim's answered a few of my questions, so, yeah, I just need a little more information to study this.
So that's fine.
I prefer the committee's proposal, and actually, Mike, I'm unsure why you don't support that, because you were part of that process, so I'm just unsure, but I support the proposal that the committee came up with.
All right, so let's discuss it at the next meeting. Please be ready to support one or another. So then you have pretty much the whole project ready, except those.
Yes, that's correct. I spoke with the county attorney's office. They provided a very simplified, plain language contract, which I like. Basically, as soon as the board comes up with a calculation, we'll be able to pitch that to their board.
What about duration?
I'm sorry?
What about the duration of the contract? Did they have any?
That isn't settled.
Okay.
It's open.
All right, Mr. Smith, welcome. And I believe you have a presentation for the board.
Yes, hi. I'm Jeff Smith with Municipal Solutions, and we're municipal financial advisors that, actually it's kind of interesting. I used to be the village administrator in Gowanda a number of years, when Jim was the village administrator here. And I went into the municipal financial advisory business around 1993. And one of the things that we have been insisting a little bit on getting a full application in to the Environmental Facilities Corporation for the emergency project. And as Jim and I were talking, he mentioned that there was a 2006 bond that carried pretty significant interest rate compared to what may be available in the market today. So he asked me if I could look into the possibility of refunding that existing debt and what kind of savings we might see as a result of that. And what I did is I actually went to the underwriter that bought the old bonds, Roosevelt and Cross, and they're a bond house in New York City that, interestingly enough, was started by Teddy Roosevelt's son, Archie. Archie was actually a general in World War II, and came back and started, was a co-founder of Roosevelt and Cross. And they make the market in New York State as far as buying most of the bond issues that come up to the state, that come available in the state, especially for issues for communities of 50,000 or less. They usually buy them. So I thought they would be the best gauge to give us an idea of what we could recognize in today's market as far as potential savings. They've done an extensive number run, and their feeling is that for the 11 years that remain on the bonds in today's market by refunding, even after all the cost of issuance are figured in, so that with a refunding, we are required to go to the New York State Comptroller's Office to get final approval for a negotiated bond issue. And you have to have all of your cost of issuance included in the deal, so it's the cost of issuance are financed by the refunding bonds. So it's not unusual to see a higher, after you do a refunding, you'll actually have a higher principal balance because all of the cost of issuance have to be added to the outstanding principal, but the net interest savings have to cover all that. And also a rule of thumb we use in the industry is it traditionally makes sense to do a refunding issue if you can come up with a 3% present value savings. In this case, after running the numbers, it looks like we would have a present value savings of about 8.3%. So we're not too bad that way, and that comes out to about a savings of $250,000 over the 11 years. So it's basically about $20,000 a year savings over the duration of the loan. So it does look very favorable as far as being able to refund these bonds now. And it's interesting, right at the present time, for whatever reason, there are not a lot of bonds in the market. So the underwriters are looking for stuff to buy. So that should also help with the final interest rates that we actually receive. So these are only estimates now. And if the board decided to go ahead with pursuing the refunding, what I would like to recommend is we do a request for proposal. Roosevelt and Cross would be included in that, in those that are invited, but there are about 10 to 12 underwriters that we see in the market as we're marketing our bonds on a daily basis. So we would send this RFP out to all of them, have the response come back, and then analyze how much they're going to charge to do the transaction on their side, and also look at the savings they're estimating that they can deliver. We can analyze what the market is and come up with a recommended underwriter, and then we would pursue the refunding as fast as we could. We put together an official statement and then negotiate this. The time it takes to do this would probably be about a 2.5 month period from RFP to an actual close. But it does look very good, promising, and your bond counsel, ORIC, Douglas Goodfriend, has prepared a refunding resolution that the board can adopt tonight. And then it's also important for you to know that you do not have to proceed. This resolution authorizes you to go ahead, but if we don't get the savings that we were looking for initially here, we don't have to go through with the deal. So basically, the marketing of the bonds and making the final decision would be delegated to the treasurer, but we would work very closely with him and determine ahead of time, what is an acceptable level, and then we would, go forward from there. Yeah.
It's now a really good time because of the Federal Reserve not raising the fine.
Yeah, they took a pause, and we were quite concerned with a rising interest rate environment back there in November and December. It looked like we were going to get 3 more rate increases in 19, whereas now They've softened their stance. There could still be another rate increase, but not 3, maybe 1. The soonest is probably June if they did it then. But a lot of the talk on the street now is that if there is one in 19, they'll probably push it out to December or so. So we have this, yeah, we have this period where I'd like to move as fast as we could because it's a bird in the hand right now, and the rates are very, very good. And like I say, there's not a lot in the market. Come June, the schools, that's the traditional time that they borrow. So the market will start getting more stuff, more product to sell. So if we can sneak in there before June, I think we would do quite well.
Was that one bond the only thing that we?
Yeah, that was about the only one that was viable. There was one other one, but it's too short for, and the savings just weren't there. Sure thing.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Jeff, I have a question on the, you and I have had a discussion, and I have talked to some of the board members about financing our bond anticipation notes. I'm wondering if the timing could be tied into this. Would there be any advantage to doing something like that, or?
Probably not an advantage to doing it, and because of IRS regulations, we would want a period of time. It's at least 2.5 weeks between sales, but I think what we might want to look at is seeing when all of your bond anticipation notes are maturing, because they're not all at one time right now, and we've got to figure out the opportune time when we can catch them all, because with the recent tax changes that Congress made, we can no longer do what was called an advance refunding, where we could refund bonds in sooner than 90 days before maturity. So we used to be able to pick a date and just take everything, refund it, and then put it in an escrow and then pay off the old bonds ahead of time. And that was taken away. So we've only got this 90-day window now. So we're going to have to maximize when we can actually call all of them together, get them put into one instrument, and then borrow at that time. I think, Jim, just in the top of my head, I'm thinking that maybe July. But I'm not
August.
July or August,
Yeah.
somewhere in
August,
there.
I think it was August.
August,
We talked
yeah,
about,
yeah.
yes.
So that's where I think we would really want to, and it makes sense to lock in rates right now. The other interesting thing is on the yield curve, you can go 30 years out, and what you're seeing at the front end of the loan versus the interest rates you're getting at the back, they're varying by 30 basis points or so. You're just not paying to stretch. So that would be the other thing we would want to look at, is what is the optimum timeline to borrow, and we're not going to pay a premium by extending that if it works with your multi-year budgeting plan, if it works in better. So I think we have a little bit of work to do, but that would be, I agree totally. I'd like to get those bands wrapped up now and get them into permanent financing.
Would we have to do another prospectus for the renewal?
No, that'll be done competitively.
Oh, okay.
I like to do these refundings negotiated because the underwriter knows right from the beginning of the deal and can start marketing the deal, because we're doing a refunding. It gives them time to go out and find buyers and really comb the market better. With a straight new borrowing, we will competitively bid that in the open market, and underwriters they'll have we usually try to get them on the street for about 2.5 weeks in advance, and we would get a bond rating, so there is a cost of doing both this issue and that issue. You have to get a bond rating for each of the issues, but if if you pay for the bond rating, the initial one out of here, you'll get a discount when you do the second one. So it makes sense, I think, to have the savings pay for the initial bond rating, and then we'll get a second rating at a discount when we go on the conventional side.
I think it makes sense.
Great.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
So,
Thank you.
excuse me,
sure.
did you want to present that resolution?
I do have the resolution.
I mean, I don't know if you, just to, I know it's short notice, but I didn't even know he was going to have that ready. This would, explain the resolution again, just,
What the resolution authorizes is that based on the refunding plan that we have, that was presented this evening, there seems to be sufficient, enough savings that the board feels comfortable in authorizing us to investigate the refunding further and actually undertake the refunding if we can come in within these parameters of this evening. It authorizes, we need a supermajority of the board in order to go to have this resolution take effect. And so we need 4 out of 5. And then basically we also have a 20-day estoppel period that there's a legal ad in the paper. After that 20 days, this is valid to actually start the process of doing the remarketing. So that would be, I'll give you the savings too that is referenced in there. But that would be what this evening, this resolution this evening would be, is basically authorizing the board's authorization to proceed with the refunding.
That's one question. You said permanent financing. If we have down the road, if we had other bonds and somehow the opportunity came that they should then be combined and bond again, is that, when you said permanent finance, is that eliminated us from doing another combination down the road to further savings?
For this deal, because it's 11 years, traditional, you can make an issue callable, but the traditional time period is 10 years before you can call it in, so you'd only have 1 year left. Yeah. But on the stuff that we did in August, I think we could do that for an 8-year call, and the market would still accept that and not pay a premium on that. Then after 8 years, you would have the ability to do what we're doing here. This is basically a 10-year, there was a 10-year call in this original bond. So that's how we're able to break into it now.
It's something that I think everybody needs to think about in
Yeah,
this, but
everybody has to read the resolution to see what they have thinking, and make some copies. Anything
Great.
else?
Beg your pardon?
Anything else? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, we're supposed to have our own discussion. Does anybody has anything to?
I got one question.
Say,
Chuck,
sure.
can you answer a question for me real quick? I wanted to kind of bring this out a little bit. Under the new food truck law that we passed recently, how many permits have we issued since that new law took in effect?
None.
0. Okay. And the other question I have here, does the village have a permitting process for, say, an organized, like an organized protest in our park? Is there a permitting process or anything that needs to be done
Not for me.
to protect the village? Okay,
It would be a village board issue, not a code enforcement issue.
okay. I mean, does anyone else understand? I mean, recently there was a protest that was organized in our park, and I wasn't sure if there was a permit, because I know some other municipalities require. Does our village charter, or does our village require any kind of
Do they?
permitting or any kind of this?
I know we had some other people who requested to do things in the park.
Correct.
It wasn't, I don't think it was just other things.
Right.
And I think, if I could be recalling correctly, I think Brad said it was better off to not have pass a resolution for some of them. Now, I don't know if this would be the same kind of thing, but they said it was better off. It was his suggestion to not pass a resolution, to just let
Okay.
them do it.
Well, my concern
but-
is the public. I mean, it's a public safety issue. I mean, if someone announces it and they want to have a rally in our park, I'm not against rallies in the park.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying if someone decides to organize a rally and it turns out to be 400, 500, 600 people in the middle of our park, I mean, I don't know how well the village is protected. I don't know if the police need to be notified in case of public safety. I mean, I didn't know if we had anything in place. That was my generic question. I didn't know. I know some municipalities require a permit. I'm just throwing it out there.
I think the village board or town board do the permitting if there is something like that. It wouldn't come from code enforcement.
There's nothing on the code.
I don't
Okay.
believe that
And
we
there's
have
nothing
anything in place.
that restricts anyone to use our park
It's a
for
public
any
common, isn't it?
purpose other than
I thought you had the
whatever.
right to peacefully protest
There are some
anywhere.
restrictions in terms of commercial purposes. We found that out during the festivals, but as far as rally and stuff, I haven't looked at that, so I don't know.
Okay. I'm just looking at it as a public safety thing.
I haven't seen anything like that. I know that we have restrictions in permitting for commercial purposes, but that's about all.
Okay.
Would this be a civil liberties thing with free speech?
Peaceful
It
protest.
falls under the free speech and the public gathering
Access.
space, as long as they're not using amplified, an amplifier to project their sound greater than a bullhorn and that kind of thing.
Or like Dan said, selling things, merchandise, or anything like that. Then it becomes
Anything
others.
commercial requires
I
our
mean,
permit.
sometimes these protests are decided the night before
Yeah,
because
there's no
something comes
notice.
up.
Sure.
So there's no time to do any.
They can't block the sidewalks and that kind of stuff. They have to leave half of it open, and there's regulations that are out there in the state, but there's no permitting unless you're gonna do a giant gathering.
I mean, I found out about the last one about 10 minutes before they started.
And
I got an email.
afterwards.
Yeah. So,
It's been my understanding for 12 years that a permit from the police department was required of any organized group that was holding a demonstration.
Well, without the police
on
chief here, I
Village
don't-
property.
I don't know. I don't think, I'm not sure.
I think so.
I thought that wasn't
I don't
true.
think so.
I don't believe that that's true.
I don't believe so.
I did
But I could be wrong.
read the code, so, I was so advised when I was the deputy town clerk. I advised the individuals planning demonstrations to seek permits from the police. I think Trustee Britz's comment is well taken.
Thanks. It's the only, I was just curious on the food permits too, so just throwing it out there. Okay, thanks. Joe.
okay, anything else? I suppose you can take a breath, I'd like deep breath, and go into the meeting. Yes, please, yeah, that's what I meant, about a minute or two.
to my shoulders.
10:30.
10:30? Incubator?
Incubator. Yeah. We're gonna have a exec. I'm sorry.
I know.
I know, everybody loves that. Okay, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Yes. I call this meeting to order. At a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia, duly called and held on the 19th day of February 2019 at 7:51 p.m. in the Trustees Room, second floor, Village Hall, Fredonia, New York, and public notice of the time and place of this meeting has been given to the news media and conspicuously posted in one or more designated public locations in accordance with Section 104 of the Open Meetings Law.
Whereas members of this board present at this meeting have read the official minutes of the Board of Trustees' regular meeting of January 22nd, 2019, and February 4th, 2019. Now therefore be it resolved, this board approves the minutes as entered into the official minutes, and be it further resolved that the reading of the minutes be dispensed with.
I second the motion.
Trustee Christina.
Yes.
Trustee Linden.
Aye.
Trustee Essek.
Yes.
Trustee Briggs.
Yes.
Trustee Barris.
Aye.
Why the public portion?
Meeting is for public comment. Any member of the public wishing to speak, once recognized, shall stand and state their name and address. Speakers will be allowed 3 minutes if speaking for themselves, or 5 minutes if speaking on behalf of a group. I will ask the speakers to refrain from remarks that are in poor taste, slanderous, or not germane to any action taken or contemplated by the board.
Anybody?
Anyone?
And everybody says no, so we're closing the public portion. All right, I have a couple of things to say and report. And the first thing is the hospital. I'm not going to take too much of your time, and I will not talk about how disappointed I am. The people who keep talking about regional solutions, all of a sudden they retreat from that and they say, save our hospital. Or even if the hospital moves to another location, that location has to be in Dunkirk. So I will not talk about that. I'm just going to say, if your beliefs are not strong enough to be tested, they're not beliefs, they're pretty much hobbies. So I will not talk about that. I will not talk about these conspiracy theories where I'm supposedly a co-conspirator to take the hospital out of the Dunkirk. I will not talk about that either. I will talk about something more substantial, and that's sewer lines, actually. I read on the paper that just this week, Beach, that's Mr. Frank Beach, who was organizing everything, stated that he heard from a Fredonia official that they may be able to supply water, but they believe the infrastructure, such as the sewer, would not handle it. They were probably going to have to spend another couple of million on that, he added. Well, I'd like to put Mr. Beach's mind at ease. Not only we are able to handle it, we are very much able to handle it. According to the application from Brooks Hospital, the hospital will produce anticipated liquid waste 30,000 gallons a day. That's 0.01 of 0.3 million gallons a day. And that represents pretty much 1% of the flow in the plant. And I want to note something else too. Currently, our plant is underutilized to the point where we're using 50% of the plant, the rest of it is closed. So not only we can handle it, we welcome that, and we welcome more, and even more. And just in case that refers to the pipes and the size of the pipes, I spoke with all people who know much more than I do, and they assured me that this is not the case. So I'm hoping that this is going to be enough to put some people's mind at ease. So that's the one thing. I really would like to know who is the village official that provided that wrong information. And that's all I have to say about the hospital. Now, this morning, the Bargate Common Steering Committee met, and in that committee, we have two trustees, Trustee Barris and Trustee Essek. Nate Aldrich, Larry Fiorella, and David Dengler were there, and also consultants from the architectural firm of Joy Kubler. We discussed a lot, many details, really. We started putting together things like the fountains, which is the most important element of the two parks. Also sidewalks, crosswalks inside, trees, and lighting, and many other things. Now, they presented two conceptual proposals, and the board is going to decide how to marry these two proposals and get to the final one, which is going to be presented to the board and to the people of the village for input. So I'm hoping that by the next meeting, we're going to have this final conceptual proposal with some budget numbers. I'm very excited about that. So, and this is the whole of my report. Trustee Christina.
I have nothing to report.
Trustee Linden.
Other reports, no.
Trustee Essek.
Yes, just one quick thing. There's a village planning board meeting tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. here, to discuss the hospital.
Trustee Bridge.
I have nothing to report.
Trustee Barris.
I have no report.
All right, so go further. Can we have the reports?
First one is the building inspector's report for the month of January 2019. 11 permits issued, 22 inspections, 11 certificates of occupancy, 24 certificates of compliance, 16 violations found, 7 violations satisfied. Fees collected were a total of $6,065. The justice report for the month of January. 57 vehicle and traffic, 29 criminal, 11 village ordinances, 4 civil, 2 environmental, 2 ABC laws, for a total of 105 cases, and a grand total of $10,860. The Fredonia Fire Department report for the month of January. The village, total calls were 75, for the town 32, for the college, SUNY Fredonia 12, mutual aid 12, the New York State Thruway 2, for a grand total of 133 calls. That's all.
Thank you very much. Correspondence was received from Fredonia Farmers Market Incorporated, requesting the use of Barker Common, the gazebo, and the closer Church Street, the close of Church Street between Day Street and Temple Street, and the use of East Barker Common every Saturday from May the 18th, 2019 to October 26, 2019, during the hours of 7 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. is hereby approved.
Be it resolved that the request of the Fredonia Farmers Market to close Church Street between Day Street and Temple Street and the use of East Barker Common every Saturday from May 18th, 2019 to October 26th, 2019 during the hours of 7 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. is hereby approved.
I'll second the motion.
Trustee Christina.
Yes.
Trustee Linden.
Aye.
Trustee Essek.
Yes.
Trustee Briggs.
Yes.
Trustee Barris.
No.
It's 4-1. Correspondence was received from the Secretary of the Fredonia Volunteer Fire Department to add Jacob Butcher to the active rolls.
Be it resolved that the name of Jacob Butcher of 96 Central Avenue, Brockton is hereby added to the active rolls of the Hook and Ladder Company effective immediately.
I second that.
Trustee Christina?
Yes.
Trustee Linden?
Aye.
Trustee Essek?
Yes.
Trustee Briggs?
Yes.
Trustee Barris?
Aye.
Correspondence dated February the 6th, 2019 was received from Rick Davis, Executive Director of the 1891 Fredonia Opera House Incorporated, requesting the use of West Parkville Common, the gazebo, and bagging of 3 parking meters on Church Street for a barbecue, bake sale, and basket auction fundraiser, Saturday, June the 1st, 2019, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Be it resolved that the request from Rick Davis, Executive Director of the 1891 Fredonia Opera House Incorporated, to use West Barker Common, the gazebo, and the bagging of the 3 parking meters on Church Street for a barbecue, bake sale, and basket auction fundraiser to support the presentation of the Bach and Beyond barbecue, music, I'm sorry, the Baroque Music Festival, I'm sorry. The Baroque, I called it the Baroque Music Festival, on Saturday, June 1st, 2019, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., is hereby approved with the stipulation that the group will be responsible for cleanup and is subject to the direction of the police department and the village receiving a certificate of insurance in the amount of $1 million, naming the village as an additional insured, which has been received.
I second that motion.
Trustee Christina?
Yes.
Trustee Linden?
Aye.
Trustee Essek?
Yes.
Trustee Briggs?
Before I vote, I have one concern regarding the barbecue trailer. Does that fall underneath our new food truck law? Are they gonna need a permit to have that?
It's not a food truck, though.
They put the pits on the ground, I don't think they have no trailer.
It says to accommodate the safe setup of a barbecue trailer, according to the letter that we received.
Yeah, I believe we said trailers in our,
Okay.
in our law.
Okay, I'm just
Yes,
asking,
ma'am.
does that cover our, okay, that's fine.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and vote yes, thank you.
Okay, and Trustee Barris?
No.
Got resolutions?
Whereas the village is responsible to provide an employee assistance program for its personnel, and whereas the ESI Group has offered to provide EAP services to the village's 87 employees for 12 months at a cost of $3,500. Therefore, be it resolved that the mayor is hereby authorized and directed to enter into an agreement with the ESI Group to provide EAP services.
I second the resolution.
Trustee Christina?
Yes.
Trustee Linden?
Aye.
Trustee Essek?
Yes.
Trustee Briggs?
Yes.
Trustee Barris?
Aye. Whereas the New York State Department of Transportation proposes the construction of an intersection safety improvements project at US Route 20 and New York Route 60 in the town of Pomfret, village of Fredonia, located in Chautauqua County, property identification number 5812.72 D263904, and whereas part of the state's improvement involves the adjustment of manhole cover elevations pursuant to Section 10, Subdivision 24 of the State Highway Law, whereas the state's improvements will be without cost to the village. Therefore, be it resolved that the Village of Fredonia hereby approves the changes to the elevations of the subject manhole covers, and be it further resolved that the Village of Fredonia hereby agrees to maintain the adjusted manhole covers, and be it further resolved that Mayor Landis is hereby authorized and directed to sign any and all documentation that may become necessary as a result of this project as it relates to the Village of Fredonia. And be it further resolved that the Fredonia Village Clerk is hereby directed to transmit 5 certified copies of the foregoing resolution to the New York State Department of Transportation.
I second that.
Trustee Christina?
Yes.
Trustee Linden?
Aye.
Trustee Essek?
Before I vote, I have no issue with the replacement and improvements on manhole covers. I have issue with the one part of the resolution, the one section, and previously discussed, so therefore I vote no.
Trustee Bridge?
I'll also vote no.
Trustee Barris?
Aye.
So it's 3-2. Trustee Linden?
Be resolved that the regular and overtime payrolls of the various village departments and bills approved by the Finance Committee and set forth in abstract number 508, 509, 510 are hereby approved and directed paid.
I second that.
Trustee Christina?
Yes.
Trustee Linden?
Aye.
Trustee Essek?
Yes?
Trustee Bridge?
Yes.
Trustee Barris?
Aye.
Thank you. And may I have a motion for an executive session to discuss possible employment and legal consultation on a contract issue?
Are we gonna do this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we going to do that?
I'll make a I'll
Okay.
give this motion here. Refunding bond resolution dated March 4th, 2019. A resolution authorizing the issuance pursuant to Section 90 or Section 90.10 of the local finance law of the refunding bonds of the Village of Fredonia, Chautauqua County, New York, to be designated substantially public improvement refunding serial bonds and providing for the other matters in the relation thereto and the payment of the bonds to be refunded thereby. Whereas the Village of Fredonia, Chautauqua County, New York, hereinafter the village heretofore issued $4,559,000 public improvement serial bonds, 2006, dated August 15, 2006, pursuant to duly authorized bond resolutions authorizing said serial bonds for various village purposes and a certificate of determination of the village treasurer dated August 25, 2006, hereinafter referred to as the refunded bond certificate. Such public improvement serial bonds, 2006, now outstanding in the amount of $2,890,000, maturing on August 15th annually in each of the years 2019 to 2030, both inclusive as more fully described in the refunded bond certificate. And whereas it would be in the public interest to refund all or a portion of the $2,705,000 outstanding principal balance of said bonds maturing in the years 2020 to 2030, both inclusive, the refunded bonds, by the issuance of refunding bonds pursuant to Section 90 or Section 90.1 of the local finance law. Whereas such refunding will result in present value savings in debt service as so required by Section 90.1 of the local finance law. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia, Chautauqua County, New York, as follows.
The capitalization letters, that's the bond, that could be the resolution. Okay. If that's okay with everyone.
Yes. I second the resolution.
Okay.
Trustee Christina?
Yes.
Trustee Linden?
Aye.
Trustee Essek?
Yes.
Trustee Bridge?
Yes.
Trustee Barris?
Aye. I move that we move into executive session.
I'll second that.
Trustee Christina?
Yes.
Trustee Linden?
Aye.
Trustee Essek?
Yes.
Trustee Bridge?
Yes.
Trustee Barris?
Aye.